Have you ever noticed how your mind can relive something from years ago as if it happened only moments ago? You can remember a conversation, a smile, an unexpected phone call, or even a single sentence someone spoke to you, and suddenly your emotions begin responding all over again. Your heart beats a little faster, your breathing changes. You smile without realizing it, or perhaps you feel a familiar sadness rising within you. Yet nothing is actually happening in the present moment. You are sitting exactly where you are, but your imagination has carried you somewhere else, and your entire body has responded to an experience that exists only in your awareness. That should tell you something extraordinary about yourself. Your imagination is not a weak, insignificant part of your mind. It is not merely a place where fantasies are stored. It is one of the most powerful forces shaping your experience of life. Every day, without realizing it, you use it constantly. Sometimes you use it to relive disappointments. Sometimes you use it to rehearse fears that haven't happened yet. Sometimes you replay mistakes over and over until they begin to feel like permanent truths about who you are. But what if you redirected that same power towards something entirely different? What if, instead of replaying the things you wish had never happened, you began remembering the life you truly desire, not imagining it as something that might happen someday, not hoping it arrives next month, not wishing that one day your circumstances finally change, but remembering it as though it already happened yesterday? Pause for a moment and really feel the difference between those two ideas. Imagine saying, "I hope everything works out." Now compare that to saying, "I still can't believe everything worked out yesterday." The words may seem similar on the surface, but emotionally they exist in completely different worlds. Hope keeps reaching. Memory simply remembers. Hope asks questions. Memory carries certainty. Hope looks forward. Memory looks back. The emotional state is completely different, and it is your emotional state that quietly influences how you move through every single day. Most people spend their lives mentally chasing tomorrow. They wake up thinking, maybe today will be the day. They measure their progress by what they can see with their physical eyes. If nothing appears to have changed, they conclude that nothing is happening. They become discouraged. They begin questioning themselves. They wonder if they are doing something wrong. They search for another technique, another book, another video, another answer, believing the missing piece is somewhere outside themselves. Yet the greatest shift is often astonishingly simple. Instead of placing your desire somewhere ahead of you, place it gently behind you. Treat it like a beautiful memory. Imagine someone asking you, "How are you feeling today?" Instead of silently answering, "I'm still waiting," imagine answering within yourself, "I'm still smiling because of what happened yesterday." Notice what happens inside you. Something softens. Something relaxes. The pressure begins to disappear when you stop trying to force your future into existence and instead begin remembering it as already complete. Your entire relationship with time changes. Think about how you normally remember yesterday. You don't argue with it. You don't wonder whether it happened. You don't spend hours trying to convince yourself it was real. You simply know. That certainty is effortless. Imagine borrowing that same effortless certainty and applying it to the life you wish to experience. Not through struggle, not through pretending, but through gentle remembrance. Your mind has always accepted memories without resistance. It does not wake up every morning asking whether yesterday actually occurred. It assumes yesterday is settled. Now imagine your desired life becoming just as settled within your awareness. This isn't about denying the world around you. It's about recognizing that every lasting change begins within before it becomes visible without. Every building existed first as an idea. Every invention began in someone's imagination. Every masterpiece lived invisibly before it became visible. Everything that now feels ordinary was once unseen. The invisible always comes first, yet we have been conditioned to trust only what our eyes report. We believe that if we cannot touch something, it isn't real. If we cannot measure it, it doesn't exist. If other people cannot confirm it, we doubt it ourselves. But your inner world has been influencing your outer experience long before you became aware of it. Consider how many times you've expected something to go wrong. You imagined the awkward conversation before it happened. You pictured yourself failing, you anticipated disappointment. Then, when events unfolded similarly, you called it coincidence. But perhaps it wasn't coincidence at all. Perhaps your inner expectation quietly shaped your perception, your confidence, your decisions, and your actions until the experience matched what you had already accepted inside. If imagination can unknowingly create fear, why shouldn't it intentionally create peace? If memory can keep an old wound alive for years, why can't chosen memories create new possibilities? The answer is that they can. The difference lies in what you choose to rehearse. Your subconscious mind learns through repetition and feeling. It doesn't constantly analyze whether every experience came from the outside world or the inside world. It responds to what you consistently impress upon it. That's why people often become trapped by old stories. They wake each morning remembering every disappointment. They remind themselves of every rejection. They repeat sentences like, "Nothing ever works for me. I've always struggled. This is just my life." Without realizing it, they are strengthening memories that reinforce limitation. Those memories become familiar, and whatever becomes familiar begins to feel natural. Imagine replacing those familiar limitations with familiar fulfillment. Imagine your inner conversations changing. Instead of saying, "I wonder if I'll ever find the right opportunity," you quietly think, "I'm still grateful for the opportunity that arrived yesterday." Instead of saying, "Maybe one day I'll finally feel secure," you remember, yesterday was the day everything changed. Notice how your body responds. Your shoulders relax, your breathing becomes slower, your face softens. The tension of waiting begins dissolving because waiting no longer defines your identity. This shift is not about lying to yourself. It is about choosing which inner reality you repeatedly occupy. Every person already lives in an inner reality. Some live in remembered failures. Some live in remembered criticism. Some live in remembered fears. Why not choose remembered success instead? Think about a child playing. A child doesn't struggle to imagine. They don't question whether their imaginary world is logical. They fully enter it. For those moments it becomes real to them. They laugh, they celebrate, they explore. Their imagination isn't weak because they believe in it completely. As adults, we often lose that natural ability. We become so dependent on physical evidence that we stop trusting the creative power already within us. Yet that power never disappeared. It simply became buried beneath years of doubt and constant attention to appearances. Imagine waking tomorrow morning and before checking your phone, before thinking about your responsibilities, before allowing old habits to return, you simply close your eyes for 1 minute. You smile gently. Then you ask yourself, what was the best part about yesterday? Immediately your imagination begins answering. Perhaps yesterday was the day you received wonderful news. Perhaps yesterday was the day you finally felt financially free. Perhaps yesterday was the day your family celebrated together. Perhaps yesterday was the day your dream became reality. Don't force the picture. Allow it to unfold naturally. Notice the room. Notice the light. Notice your expression. Notice how your body feels. The more natural the scene becomes, the more familiar it begins to feel. Familiarity is important because true confidence never feels dramatic. Real certainty is quiet. Think about your own name. You don't wake every morning trying to convince yourself what your name is. You simply know. Imagine your desired life becoming just as familiar. Not because you forced yourself to believe, but because you've remembered it so often that it now feels completely natural. People frequently believe transformation requires enormous effort. Sometimes the greatest transformation begins with a single assumption consistently maintained. One simple inner decision repeated daily becomes a habit. Habits become identities. Identities shape actions. Actions influence outcomes. Everything begins quietly within. There may still be moments when your outer world appears unchanged. You may still encounter delays. You may still see circumstances that seem to contradict your inner assumption. Do not panic. A seed planted today does not become a tree tomorrow morning. Yet no wise gardener stands over the soil demanding immediate proof. The gardener understands that unseen growth always precedes visible growth. Roots develop first. Strength develops first. Life develops first. Then, one day, what was invisible becomes impossible to ignore. Your inner assumptions work the same way. Each time you return to the memory of your fulfilled desire, you are strengthening invisible roots. You are becoming the person for whom that experience feels normal. When something feels normal within you, your decisions naturally begin reflecting that identity. You speak differently. You notice opportunities you once overlooked. You carry yourself with greater ease. You stop chasing because you no longer feel incomplete. The world often responds to that inner change in ways you never expected, sometimes through new opportunities, sometimes through unexpected conversations, sometimes through seemingly ordinary events that quietly lead to extraordinary outcomes. You don't have to force every step. Life has a remarkable way of arranging details once your inner state changes. So today, instead of asking when your dream will arrive, ask yourself something entirely different. What do you remember most about yesterday? Remember the relief. Remember the gratitude. Remember the smile that wouldn't leave your face. Remember the peaceful sleep that came after knowing everything had finally fallen into place. Allow those memories to become more real than your doubts, because the memories you choose to nurture today become the foundation of the life you experience tomorrow. The future has always been shaped by the assumptions you quietly carry in the present. And when you begin living from the peaceful certainty that your greatest desire already belongs to your past, you stop reaching, stop striving, and stop begging life to change. Instead, you begin walking with the calm confidence of someone who already knows the story has a beautiful ending, because in the deepest part of your being, it already happened yesterday. Stop waiting. For a moment, allow those two words to settle deeply within you. How much of your life has been spent waiting, waiting for the right opportunity, waiting for someone to call, waiting for enough money, waiting for confidence, waiting for circumstances to improve, waiting for permission to finally feel happy? Many people don't realize that waiting slowly becomes an identity. At first, it feels temporary. You tell yourself, I'll be happy when this happens. Then another goal appears, another condition, another obstacle, another reason to postpone peace. Eventually, life becomes one long season of waiting. You wake up expecting tomorrow to give you what you refuse to give yourself today. But tomorrow has an interesting habit. It always stays one day away. As soon as it arrives, it becomes today, and the mind immediately creates another tomorrow to chase. That is why so many people reach old age still believing their real life is just around the corner. They have mastered waiting without ever realizing it. Now imagine something completely different. Imagine waking up with absolutely nothing to wait for. Not because every physical circumstance has already changed before your eyes, but because within your own awareness, the event has already been completed. The emotional race has ended. The struggle has ended. The searching has ended. Instead of saying, I can't wait until it happens, you quietly smile because in your inner world, it already belongs to yesterday. Notice how different those two states feel. One creates tension. The other creates peace. One keeps looking ahead. The other rests in quiet certainty. Life is often less about what is happening around you and more about the state from which you are experiencing it. Two people can stand in exactly the same place and see completely different worlds. One sees possibility. The other sees limitation. One notices opportunities. The other notices problems. The difference is rarely the environment. The difference is the inner assumption they carry wherever they go. Your assumptions become the invisible lens through which you interpret everything. If you assume nothing ever works out for you, your attention naturally searches for evidence to confirm it. You notice every delay, every disappointment, every unanswered message, every obstacle. Soon your mind says, see, I knew it. Not because life proved you right, because your attention was trained to recognize only what matched your expectation. Now imagine changing the assumption instead. Imagine beginning every day from the feeling that everything already worked out yesterday. Would you still spend hours worrying? Would you constantly seek reassurance? Would every delay feel like a disaster? Probably not. Because someone who remembers success responds very differently from someone who expects failure. Think about the last time you successfully completed something important. Perhaps you graduated, finished a difficult project, solved a major problem, recovered from a challenge that once seemed impossible. Looking back now, doesn't that struggle seem smaller than it did while you were living through it? At the time, every obstacle felt enormous. Now it feels like a chapter that has already passed. That's the emotional gift of the past. Completed events lose their power to create anxiety. Imagine giving your greatest desire that same emotional position. Imagine placing it behind you instead of ahead of you. Instead of carrying anxiety about whether it will happen, you carry gratitude because it already happened. This isn't pretending that the future doesn't exist. It's choosing which emotional reality you live from. There is an enormous difference. People often believe that confidence comes after success. But look carefully. Many successful people acted confidently long before there was physical evidence. Their confidence wasn't based entirely on circumstances. It was based on an inner conviction. They behaved as though the destination was already certain, not because they could prove it, because they accepted it inwardly. Acceptance changes everything. The moment you truly accept something, your relationship with it changes. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. At first, every movement demanded your complete attention. You worried about balance, you feared falling. Every second felt uncertain, but eventually something shifted. Balance became natural. You stopped thinking about every movement. Now you could ride while talking, observing your surroundings, even thinking about something completely different. Why? Because what once required effort had become familiar. The same principle applies to every area of life. Whatever becomes familiar no longer creates resistance. So instead of trying to force belief through endless repetition, allow familiarity to develop naturally. Each evening, remember your fulfilled desire as yesterday's experience. Replay it gently, not with desperation, not with emotional strain. Simply revisit it as though you are recalling something beautiful. Perhaps yesterday you signed the contract. Perhaps yesterday your family celebrated wonderful news. Perhaps yesterday you looked at your bank account with deep gratitude. Perhaps yesterday you held someone's hand and realized everything had finally fallen into place. The details themselves are less important than the feeling they awaken. Feel the relief. Relief is powerful because relief only exists after the problem has ended. When you genuinely feel relieved, your body behaves differently. Your breathing slows. Your muscles relax. Your mind stops searching for danger. Relief tells your entire system, everything is okay now. Imagine living from that feeling every single day. Not because circumstances forced you into peace, because you chose peace first. Many people unknowingly do the opposite. They rehearse problems every morning. Before getting out of bed, they remember unpaid bills, difficult conversations, past mistakes, future worries. Their day begins with stress before anything has even happened. Then they wonder why life feels heavy. Your first thoughts often become the emotional foundation for everything that follows. If your first thought is lack, you begin the day feeling incomplete. If your first thought is gratitude, you begin the day feeling abundant. Neither circumstance may have changed overnight. Only your state has changed. But state influences perception. Perception influences behavior. Behavior influences experience. Everything is connected. Think about how differently you walk when you've just received wonderful news. Your posture changes naturally. You don't force yourself to stand taller, it simply happens. Your smile appears effortlessly. People notice something different about you. They may not know why, but they sense it. Energy is often communicated long before words are spoken. Someone who feels fulfilled moves differently from someone who feels desperate. Desperation pushes. Fulfillment attracts. Desperation constantly asks, where is it? Fulfillment quietly says, I'm grateful. One chases, the other receives. Imagine entering every conversation already feeling complete. Imagine attending every interview without needing approval to feel valuable. Imagine meeting people without silently wondering whether they will accept you. When your inner world is already fulfilled, you stop asking others to complete you. That freedom changes relationships. It changes opportunities. It changes the atmosphere you bring into every room. People are naturally drawn toward calm certainty. Not loud confidence, not arrogance, quiet certainty. The kind that doesn't need constant validation. The kind that doesn't argue. The kind that simply knows. That quiet knowing is far more powerful than endless effort. Think of a mountain. It doesn't announce its strength. It doesn't compete with the sky. It simply stands. Its presence speaks for itself. Your inner certainty can become like that, still, grounded, unshaken by temporary appearances. Does this mean challenges disappear overnight? Not necessarily. Life may still present moments that test your attention. There may be days when old doubts attempt to return. Old habits rarely disappear instantly. They fade through disuse. Each time fear appears, you have a choice. You can feed the old story, or you can gently return to your remembered fulfillment. You don't fight fear. You simply stop giving it your attention. Imagine sitting beside a fireplace. Every fearful thought is like placing another log onto the flames. The more attention you give it, the stronger it becomes. Now imagine choosing not to add another log. Eventually the fire weakens. Not because you attacked it, because you stopped feeding it. The same is true of limiting beliefs. They survive through repeated attention. Withdraw that attention, replace it with remembered success. Gradually, the old story loses its strength. A new story quietly takes its place. One day you notice something surprising. The thought that once frightened you no longer affects you. The situation that once created panic now feels manageable. Not because the world changed first, because you changed first. That inner transformation often happens so gradually that you don't notice it until someone else points it out. They might say, "You seem different. You look more peaceful. You seem more confident lately." What they're noticing is not merely a change in behavior. They're sensing a different state of being. States communicate themselves, whether we intend them to or not. This is why protecting your inner conversations is so important. Pay attention to the quiet sentences you repeat throughout the day. I never have enough. Nothing works. I'm always unlucky. I'm behind. I'm not good enough. These may seem like harmless thoughts, but repeated often enough, they become assumptions. Assumptions become expectations. Expectations quietly shape experience. Now imagine replacing them. I'm grateful everything worked out. I still feel the joy from yesterday. I remember the moment everything changed. I'm thankful life surprised me in the best possible way. Or notice that none of these thoughts create struggle. They create remembrance. They invite gratitude instead of anxiety. Gratitude is one of the most natural signs that the heart has accepted fulfillment. You don't force gratitude. It appears when you genuinely feel something has already been received. That is why remembering yesterday can be so powerful. Yesterday requires no effort to believe. Yesterday asks for no proof. Yesterday simply exists in memory. Allow your fulfilled desire to occupy that same place within you. Carry it gently, not with excitement that quickly fades, but with quiet appreciation that remains steady. Imagine ending each day by smiling at the invisible progress already taking place. Even if the physical evidence has not fully appeared yet, trust that every moment spent dwelling in fulfillment is reshaping the person you are becoming. Because in the end, lasting change is never about forcing the world to become different. It is about becoming inwardly familiar with the version of yourself who no longer waits, no longer doubts, and no longer defines life by what is missing. That version of you moves through each day with peaceful certainty, remembering what the eyes have not yet seen but the heart has already accepted. And from that place of calm assurance, every step forward becomes lighter, every decision becomes clearer, and every new day feels less like another day of waiting and more like the natural continuation of a story whose happiest chapter has already been written. There is something fascinating about the human mind that most people overlook every single day. It is not only capable of imagining the future, but it is constantly interpreting the present based on what it has already accepted as true. Every experience you have is filtered through your assumptions. You may believe you are simply reacting to life, but more often than not, you are responding to the story you have been telling yourself for years. That story is powerful. It shapes your expectations before a single event unfolds. It influences the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, the opportunities you notice, and even the opportunities you unknowingly ignore. If your inner story says that life is difficult, your attention naturally searches for proof that life is difficult. If your inner story says that people cannot be trusted, every small disappointment becomes evidence. If your inner story says that success belongs to others but not to you, every achievement someone else experiences feels like confirmation that you are somehow left behind. The remarkable part is that most of this happens automatically. People rarely question the stories running quietly beneath the surface of their minds. Instead, they mistake those stories for reality itself. Imagine wearing a pair of blue-tinted glasses every day since childhood. After many years, you would stop noticing the glasses altogether. You would simply assume the world itself was blue. If someone removed the glasses, the world would suddenly appear different, not because the world had changed, but because the filter had changed. Your assumptions work in exactly the same way. They become so familiar that you mistake them for facts. Yet assumptions are not facts. They are choices that have been repeated so often they feel true. The beautiful news is that what has been repeated can be replaced. A new assumption, consistently accepted, gradually becomes just as natural as the old one once was. This is why remembering your fulfilled desire as though it happened yesterday is such a profound shift. It quietly replaces one filter with another. Instead of seeing life through the lens of lack, you begin seeing it through the lens of completion. Completion feels different. It breathes differently. It walks differently. It speaks differently. Think about someone who has already crossed the finish line of a marathon. Notice their expression. They are not running anymore. They are not asking how much farther they have to go. They are no longer measuring distance. The race has ended. Now imagine someone still standing at the starting line. Their body is tense. Their mind is full of questions. They wonder whether they can finish. They compare themselves to everyone else. They worry about obstacles that haven't even appeared yet. Many people approach life as though they are permanently standing at the starting line. Every goal feels far away. Every dream feels distant. Every desire feels just beyond reach. Now imagine living from the feeling that the race finished yesterday. The pressure disappears. The urgency fades. You stop chasing because there is nothing left to chase. That doesn't mean you stop taking action. It means your actions are no longer driven by fear. There is a tremendous difference between inspired action and desperate action. Desperate action is fueled by the belief that something is missing. Inspired action flows from the quiet confidence that everything is already unfolding perfectly. The actions may appear similar on the outside. Two people can send the same email, attend the same interview, start the same business, speak the same words. Yet the energy behind those actions is completely different. One acts from fear of failure. The other acts from confidence in fulfillment. People often underestimate how much their emotional state influences their behavior. Imagine walking into a room convinced that nobody likes you. Without realizing it, you avoid eye contact. Your smile becomes hesitant, your voice becomes uncertain. You interpret neutral expressions as rejection. You leave believing your assumption was correct. But what actually happened? Did people reject you? Or did your assumption shape your behavior in ways that created the very experience you feared? Now imagine entering that same room remembering that yesterday you experienced genuine acceptance. You smile naturally, you make eye contact, you speak freely, you listen without fear. People respond differently because you are presenting a different version of yourself. The room has not changed, you have. And because you have changed, your experience changes too. Life often mirrors the identity you consistently carry. That identity is not determined by your past. It is determined by what you repeatedly accept as true now. This is why dwelling on yesterday's imagined fulfillment is so transformative. It gently reshapes identity. Instead of thinking, I'm someone trying to become successful, you begin feeling like someone who already experienced success. Instead of saying, I'm trying to become confident, you quietly remember what confidence felt like yesterday. There is no struggle in remembering. Memory is effortless. Effort belongs to trying. Notice how often people use the word trying. I'm trying to be happy. I'm trying to believe. I'm trying to stay positive. Trying often keeps the mind focused on the absence of the result. Imagine someone learning to swim. If years later they still introduce themselves by saying, I'm trying to swim, something would seem strange. Eventually, swimming becomes part of who they are. The identity changes. Life begins changing when identity changes. Everything else follows. This doesn't require forcing yourself into endless positive thinking. In fact, forcing usually creates resistance. If you spend all day trying to convince yourself of something you secretly doubt, your attention remains fixed on the doubt. Gentleness is far more powerful. Instead of arguing with yourself, simply remember. Remember yesterday. Remember the relief. Remember the celebration. Remember calling someone you love with wonderful news. Remember sitting quietly after realizing everything finally worked out. Let the scene become ordinary. The mind trusts what feels ordinary. Think about the way you drive home. If you've traveled the same road hundreds of times, you barely think about each turn. Familiarity guides you effortlessly. Imagine your fulfilled life becoming just as familiar. You no longer need to force yourself into belief because the experience has become mentally routine. Many people ask, how long should I imagine? The better question is, how naturally can I remember? Length is far less important than quality. Even a few peaceful moments deeply felt can influence your entire day. A single remembered moment filled with gratitude carries more power than hours of anxious effort. Consider someone who constantly checks whether their planted seed has grown. Every morning they dig into the soil. Every afternoon they inspect it again. Every evening they worry because nothing appears above the surface. Their impatience interferes with their peace. Now imagine another gardener. They water the soil. They trust the process. They continue living their life. They know growth is taking place whether they can see it or not. Which gardener enjoys the journey more? Which one sleeps peacefully? Trust is not passive. Trust is an active decision to stop disturbing what has already been planted. Your assumption is that seed. Your imagination is the soil. Your feeling is the water. Every time you return to the memory of fulfilled desire, you nourish that invisible seed. You don't need to know every step between where you are and where your dream appears physically. Life has countless ways of arranging circumstances beyond your current understanding. Think back over your own life. How many important moments arrived unexpectedly? Perhaps you met someone by accident. Perhaps an opportunity appeared through a conversation you almost didn't have. Perhaps a challenge eventually became the doorway to something far greater. Very few meaningful events unfold exactly as we predict. Yet looking backward, they often appear perfectly connected. The path makes sense only after we have walked it. That is why controlling every detail creates unnecessary tension. Your responsibility is not to force every outcome. Your responsibility is to remain faithful to the inner state you have chosen. Imagine watching a movie for the second time. You already know how it ends, because you know the ending. Scenes that once caused anxiety no longer disturb you as deeply. You remain calm because you understand they are temporary. Now imagine living your life with that same confidence. You know the ending. The temporary scenes no longer define you. Temporary delays no longer convince you that the story has failed. You understand that every chapter serves the final outcome. This changes how you respond to setbacks. Instead of saying, everything is falling apart, you quietly think, this is only one scene. Instead of believing an obstacle is permanent, you remember yesterday's fulfillment. The obstacle immediately becomes smaller, not because it disappeared instantly, because your perspective expanded. Perspective is powerful. Stand inches away from a painting and all you see are individual brushstrokes. Step back several feet and the entire masterpiece appears. Many people live emotionally pressed against today's brushstrokes. Every inconvenience feels enormous. Every delay feels permanent. Remembering your fulfilled desire allows you to step back. You begin viewing life from completion rather than confusion. Completion changes perspective. Perspective creates peace. Peace allows wisdom. Wisdom leads to better choices. Everything begins flowing naturally. As you continue practicing this way of living, something subtle begins happening. You stop measuring your worth by circumstances. You stop needing constant evidence. You stop asking whether you're doing enough. Instead, you begin enjoying the quiet confidence of already being the person you once hoped to become. That confidence is magnetic because it isn't demanding anything from the world. It isn't asking people to validate it. It isn't begging circumstances to improve. It simply exists. People notice that kind of presence, not because it is loud, but because genuine peace has a quiet strength that cannot be imitated. When someone has truly accepted fulfillment within themselves, they no longer rush through life searching for the next reason to feel complete. They carry completeness with them. Every conversation becomes lighter. Every challenge becomes smaller. Every opportunity becomes easier to recognize because fear no longer clouds their vision. Eventually, there comes a moment when you realize something extraordinary. The person who once spent every day waiting has quietly disappeared. In their place stands someone who walks with calm assurance, smiles without needing a reason, and greets each new day with the quiet remembrance that life has already shifted in the deepest part of their being. They no longer chase tomorrow because they are no longer defined by what seems absent today. Their heart has accepted the fulfillment of yesterday, and from that peaceful certainty, the outer world begins step by step to reflect the inner story they chose to remember.